Hello, friends. I'm your host, Adnan Qaiser, in this training lecture series, which we have designed for the individual capacity building of graduating students in different universities and young professionals who have either started their professional career or are going to begin it. So these certain elements which I am trying to highlight in these brief sessions, they are basically to augment or foster your knowledge base and to give you a better worldview for you to become a solid professional as you commence your respective careers in the fields which you have chosen in your universities. So today I am going to talk a little controversial subject, which is presently, which is greatly affected our society and our political ethos. Understand that every society evolves. We had seen different civilizations. Our country is faced at in a confluence of four or five different civilizations. Obviously, if you see in the north, we have a Confucius or Chinese civilization. In the in our east is the Hindu civilization, very ancient, for 5,000 years of recorded history. There's a Buddhist civilization as well. Then in our west is in the Western Asia is the Arab civilization or the Central Asian civilization. And then in our own country, we have the Indus Valley civilization. So it's a confluence of different civilizations. So civilizations evolve. And but obviously, when this nation states were created, they had a certain purpose. They had a purpose to integrate different ethnic and linguistic groups which are in a certain geographic areas to live harmoniously. And for that, the governments or the people of authority, they have been trying to uh, use different kind of ways and measures to influence the thinking of the people of the indigenous land. So what has happened in our culture, in our country or in our state, that unfortunately the people have not been able to evolve. I'm going to discuss it in my subsequent argument. But you have to understand. So what is happening that, as you guys have become politically aware, you have you have become upset, angry, agitated, frustrated with the kind of a governance which is given to you, because obviously you have lack of everything these days. And I'm going to talk about the lack of resources as well, and why we have adopted this. The society has adopted a certain kind of a mindset which is irrational and which is not productive. But there's a background to that. So today I'm going to talk about your frustration and your anger aimed at the current government or the armed forces as such, because you see, armed forces in our country have played a very significant role, and it continues to play. And I'm going to tell you that why there has been a need for the armed forces or the army as such to play a political role in our country. So please listen very carefully, which I'm going to talk in this lecture. You may find certain issues conflicting to your ideas. I would like you to be open-minded, because this is, if you find I am saying something different, so then take it as an alternate viewpoint. So you should be open to alternate viewpoint, and try, and later on apply it on your own mind and see what objectively comes to your mind. So it is good point. It's a good thing to be emotionally charged, but then if you unreasonably use your emotions or your energies in a destructive way, then it becomes not conducive, not helpful for the society, and it's going to be harmful for your own personality as well. So if you have a certain grievance against the governance or the government or whatever institution, then obviously there are ways and means to channelize it, to express it, right? And then wait for the right time for the change to come. And I am sure the change will come, because obviously, there is the whole world is changing. We do not know what is right next, around the corner, for us in our personal lives, as well as for the world at large. So be open and relax. So understand. I'm going to advise you on this aspect, which is upsetting you presently. When I go to different universities, people have this kind of a frustration or anger in their mind. And I have a military background, and sometimes I cannot use my rank, because they are harboring so kind of a disgust or of a ill feeling in their own hearts. So I'm here to explain to you. I'm not going to pacify you. I'm not going to give any. I'm not their apologist. I'm not going to explain as a stooge. I'm not going to explain as their apologist, or or some kind of supporting them. I have my own logical argument, and which I want to pose to you. When I went to the military academy, I was 16 years old at that time. So my father, he used to send me a book every month to read. He had given me this habit of reading books, and so the first book which he gifted to me was Dale Carnegie's very popular book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Uh, Millions and millions of copies have been sold around the world, and to understand that, how we can make friends in this era. Obviously, it's a digitalized era. We have social media friends, but in those days, in the earlier days, we used to have physical friends, very important for our personal health, emotional stability, and our physical upbringing. So my father, so on the first page of that book, he wrote with his own hand. He used to call me partner. So partner, if you want to make friends, do not discuss, never discuss three things with them. The first one was of politics. So never discuss politics with your friends. Obviously, there is going to be a contention. Then, because they have a certain different viewpoint, you will have a different viewpoint. The second one is religion. So religion, obviously, we have lack of information about religion. So we cannot say anything about religion or faith with authenticity. So that happens that it causes friction. And the third thing he advised me not to discuss with my friend was their families, their personal behavior, or their personal life. So, so if my advice to you as well is this, that never argue or discuss these three elements: politics, religion, and their families with your friend, and obviously you will become a very popular person. So now the problem is this, that you guys are young. You guys are young, and you in your schools. I've been a principal of a school, and I know that we have been fed with incorrect information about our history, about our culture, and everything. So you see, I in the previous episode I had given you a lecture on critical thinking, and it's very important for you to understand that information is always used for propaganda or nefarious purposes as well. So there is a background or a motive of people, even for the governments, to shape the narrative of their population for a certain way, for a certain outcome, or to sway their thinking in a certain way. So, so you are not familiar with our security constraints. You're not familiar with our political ethos, and you are not. You do not know our cultural underpinning. So I cannot give you a history lesson in this Pakistan studies or English lesson, but I would like you to review whatever little information that you have objectively and apply it. So while you are restless, you would like to have a change, because now we have a global village. You are interacting with the international community. You are aware all kind of information from Western world is provided to you, and you are saying that why they are democratic countries, they have a welfare government, people have all kind of liberties, freedom of speech and everything. Why is it not available to you here? So I'm not going to give you why is it not given to you. Obviously, they have a who is not providing you this thing. Obviously, they have their own compulsions or constraints. But I am just going to tell you that you are not familiar with the history of this country. So you have to objectively learn the history. You know, when Maulana Rumi, you might have read about him. He was a 13th century very popular Sufi scholar in Konya and Turkey. So Maulana Rumi, started to have dreams that somebody is going to come into his life and he is going to transform his give more depth to his scholarly pursuits and his own personality. So then Shams Tabriz from Baghdad, present day Iraq, he traveled to Konya, and then he developed a companionship with Maulana Rumi. So the first thing Shams Tabriz did to Maulana Rumi was to make him unlearn whatever Rumi had learned in his past life. So Shams Tabriz made him unlearn everything. There is a story that he threw all his books in a well of water, and then obviously then so he made him unlearn. So understand this thing that you have a fixed kind of a thinking. Whatever you have read this thing, what I told you about your subconscious. Subconscious is what you have experienced, what you have learned all your life. So you apply it, right? So, but for a new thing to come into your mind, you have to first unlearn that and then get a new set of information objectively in your own mind. So, it is very imperative to set aside your past prejudices and your perspective. So, Frederick the Great of Prussia. Prussia is the former state of Germany. What we present have Germany. There used to be a Prussian Empire, Wilhelm Kaiser and everyone. So the Frederick, or the Emperor of Prussia, he had said that the greatest and noblest pleasures which men can have in this world is to discover new truths. So it gives you pleasure, it gives you comfort, it gives you satisfaction, and it is a noble thing to do that, to get truth. If you remember, I had last time I told you that there are three sides of every story: my side of the story, your side of the story, and the truth. So try to find out the truth. In one of my book reviews, I had mentioned that history never gets archaic. Archaic means outdated. It gets perfected and more truthful with age. So if we have, we keep learning about past civilizations, World War One, World War Two. So as history comes back to us, it becomes more truthful and unvarnished. So as time passes, you are familiar, you are getting more familiar with new things about your own country, and but again, you have to restrain your emotions and be objective in your disposition. Um, so first of all, understand that our country had been a national security state. National security state. There had been four countries in the world who had been termed as the national security state. National security state is a country which faces existential threat to its existence, that it would be wiped off the map. So it's very important for that country to safeguard its sovereignty and territorial integrity. And our country had been one of the four countries. The first one was Taiwan, right next to China. So Taiwan is one country, which could be one day you would find it no more existing in the world. The second one has been South Korea. So there is a North Korea and there is a South Korea. If you go back in history and during the 1950s to 1953, there had been a Korean War. They wanted to have to join, but then there had been a military division in that. So uh, the North Koreans say that the South Korea, it is one Korea, and they would they threaten its existence with nuclear weapons or everything. So the second country is South Korea. The third one is Israel. Whether you like it or not, Israel also had been facing threats from the Middle Eastern countries or the Arab countries. There had been a war in 1948 when in 49 when Israel was created through British mandate. Then there had been a war in 1967. Then there had been a third war in 1974. So and still, we keep seeing that there are frictions going on between the Arab and the Israel because of their kind of their policies and their expansionist policies. So Israel is the third, and our country had been the fourth, which had been facing threats from India. Now understand um, why India had not accepted this thing, because obviously there had been an issue of partition in 1947. Then the subcontinent were divided into three parts, and on the basis of two nation theory. Now, if you read a book of Babar Ayaz, Babar Ayaz has been a former journalist, and he had written a very masterpiece book. It's called "What's Wrong with Pakistan." What's wrong with Pakistan? It's available in a PDF version, freely available online. You can read it. Very important. He negates the two nation theory, that the Hindus and Muslims were two different nations and they could not coexist together. So again, I'm taking you back into the history and giving you a history lesson. So he says, I'm not saying this. I'm just putting across an alternate point of view to you people. So be open minded and relaxed. Don't get upset if I talk to you something controversial. So he says that the two nation theory was a misnomer and falsified information. And it was misleading for a specific purpose. Excuse me. So you see, according to him, that when this under the 1935 British India Act in 1937, provincial elections were held. So what had happened that the Indian Congress had taken all the majority seats, about 90% of them, and the Muslim League, which was comprised of the Muslims, could not get any kind of a representation. So the Muslims, they were the Jagirdars or the Vaderas or the landowners, which we call the feudal landlords. They were upset. They said that why, this way they are going to lose their political power. So according to Babar Ayaz, it was they, the landowners or the feudal landlords, they coined the term two nation theory, and they influenced Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Allama Iqbal, that in 1940 at Lahore resolution, then the term two nation theory was coined, and then there was a religious slogan was also given, which I do not want to use it here. But then what had happened when this new two nation theory, understand, in the previous critical thinking section, I had told you that all these slogans, information, it has a certain purpose. It tries to sway your thinking of the population. So what happened when this two nation theory was created and the religious slogan was created? When the elections were occurred again in 1946, then the Muslim League got 87% of the seats. So you see, this is how the population was swayed and persuaded, and its thinking was affected. Uh, Now, very controversial thing, but then I would like to you to think for a little while. You are educated people, that the alternate view is this, that that the British Empire didn't want this subcontinent to be ruled, to have one geographic boundary, right? Because understand that the imperial powers or the colonial powers, they are very popular, they're very powerful, and they're very smart, intellectually smart. They do not want anyone to pose any kind of a challenge or threat to you. Now, what is happening in present day? You see, previously we used to have, in during the Cold War, they used to have two powers. One was the Soviet Union, and the other one was United States. Then, when the Soviet Union was dissolved and fragmented in 1991, December 1991, so Russia became very weak. But then United States become it was called as the unipolar moment of for the United States. It became the sole superpower of the world. But then it was challenged by China, and presently, then the China economic rise and military rise, and then Russia slowly gained its own power. So now the world has become multipolar. So there are influences. So these powerful countries, or the mega powerful countries, are called as imperial powers. And then there used to be the colonial powers, which used to have the expansionist tendencies. They went to African countries, they colonized Africa, they went to Far East, Indonesia, Malaysia, and different countries, and South Asia as well. So they are very smart people. They thought that if subcontinent is a small continent. If it stays as a one geographic thing, then it tomorrow or at a later stage, it may cause some kind of an economic challenge or a military challenge or a political challenge to those colonial powers, which they didn't want. So that's how they divided it into three parts: the present day Bangladesh, the India, and then Pakistan, right? And then there is an alternate view: is this that it's a conspiracy theory that Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who created Pakistan, and Allama Iqbal, who was the poet of the East, they were used as a ploy by the British Empire to influence, because they were the sole leaders of the Muslims of the subcontinent. So they were used to influence the thinking and to reduce the power of the. Now, what happened? That when this partition took place and two countries were created, so the leaders of the Indian National Congress, they didn't accept it, the reality. And I tell you the quote of Indian leaders. They said that Pakistan is an artificial concept of a state which will sooner rather than later will amalgamate with the mother India. So understand. So they never accepted, they never acknowledged. Although when the two nations they carried out the nuclear explosions, then obviously there had been some stability had come, and then there had been an official recognition of Pakistan. That's a different story. But they had not. So Pakistan had been facing existential threat. It continues to face Indian aggression because there is a disputed issue of Jammu and Kashmir. And obviously, until that one is resolved amicably, this issue is going to continue. So this is one thing. And another thing about this two-nation theory, if you objectively see that if this partition had not taken place, I'm going to tell you why the intelligentsia of this country, these drawing room classes, when they chat in their drawing rooms over coffee in the evening, they say that the partition should not have taken place. Why? Because of the Indian rise. Indian has risen economically and socially as well, so which has to be acknowledged. But so they say that the partition should not have taken place. And if you see from my point of view as well, that there are presently about 1.1 billion Hindus in India, right? There are about 200 million Muslims in India, and there are about 150, some say 165, some say 150 million in Bangladesh, and 240 million Muslims in Pakistan. So when you total it up, it becomes about 600 million. So 1.1 billion and 600 million. It's a very, very narrow gap. So, if partition had not taken place, I'm just giving you a food for thought. If the partition had not taken place, then this minority, 600 million, could have given a formidable political challenge to the majority, and they could have fought together for their political and economic rights. This is one thinking. So understand this thing, that this is a thinking which is going on, because obviously this two nation theory, which Babar Ayaz had identified as a genetic defect of the country. He said that, I'm quoting from his book, that Muslims had ruled for nearly 8 centuries. They had ruled India for nearly 8 centuries. This is slightly incorrect, because the Mughal dynasty had ruled for 5 centuries only. So I do not know from where he had got this 8 century idea. But then he said that Muslims had ruled India for 8 centuries, and suddenly they realized that there is a need for a separate homeland, as a separate nation for the Muslim. So this kind of a paradox. Secondly, as I said, that Indian leaders had never accepted the reality of Pakistan, and it still continues. Now, obviously, the existential threat to Pakistan, which came from India, excuse me, was until the nuclear tests in May 1998. So after the nuclear test, there had been a nuclear equilibrium. It is known as strategic stability in official terms. So because there had been a nuclear deterrence had been established between the two countries, so nobody could threat the existence of any country. But still, what had happened, that for the conflict to continue, the militaries of the both sides, they devised a new kind of a conflict. It is called as the under the nuclear threshold conflict, or was called as the cold start doctrine, or a limited war concept, or surgical strikes under the nuclear threshold. And this is a long story. I'm going to tell you about when we discuss Balakot attack and Operation Sindoor. Then I'm going to tell you that what are all these things, because then India developed 8 integrated battle groups comprising of highly mechanized forces and airborne assets to infiltrate into Pakistan, punish Pakistan within 36 hours, and then retreat whenever a kind of a terrorist attack takes place in India. So this is a different story. Sorry. And then obviously we had seen that on 29th September 2016, India carried out a kind of a surgical strikes in Pakistan. The Balakot took place on 26th of February 2019. Then Operation Sindoor took place on the night of 6th and 7th May 2025. Interestingly, when this Balakot attack took place, Prime Minister Modi, Indian Prime Minister Modi, had instructed his armed forces not to harm the ordinary people of Pakistan. Why is it so? Because in their thinking, they consider the people as their own natives, right? Otherwise, if they are considered as enemies, then obviously they had to be harmed. So he had instructed. So this is a quote which is available at internet. I would like you to read about that. So it's a different, altogether different thing that I would later tell you that Pakistan's intelligence has deep ingress into the defense architecture of India, and whenever an Indian aircraft takes off from India to attack Pakistan, so Pakistan gets the information 30 minutes in advance. This is a different thing, that why the combat air patrol was recalled from Azad Kashmir during the Balakot strikes, and why Operation Sindoor. They were all prepared to bring down the Indian aircrafts, 6 or 7 of them. So all these things, which we'll be discussing later. I have I've about 4 study papers on that. If you would like to read more about that, you can find them at LinkedIn. Coming back to your political grievances, so understand that you have to understand our political and societal malaise. Malaise is a disease. First and fundamental problem is our elite culture and entitlement. So you know why the military has to influence or to play a role in the political affairs of the country was because of this insidious nature. Insidious is kind of a treacherous nature. They are not faithful with the soil, with the land. So these elites who are the feudal landlords, they who coined the term of two nation theory, they had never been sold or faithful to this country. So what they always, still today, they have been pursuing their own self-interest, political, economic, and everything, for that purpose. So to keep a check on them, so the armed forces had to play certain kind of a role. I quote, I tell you the quote of former General Yahya Khan, when he took over from General Ayub Khan, as Chief Martial Law Administrator in 1969. So, in one of his addresses at Baloch Regiment Center in Abbottabad, he said, and I quote, "I cannot throw the country to the wolves." So obviously he meant political wolves. So he said, "I cannot throw the country to the wolves." So that means that the mindset of the military was that they considered that the politicians, the landlords, they are predators. They are not faithful to the country. So that's why there has to be some kind of a check on their activities. So when whenever I have an opportunity to give a talk or a lecture in Canada, so people ask me one question: oh, identify one area through which Pakistan could be structured and strengthened, and I identify it as land reforms. Now you have to understand about it. It's a very lengthy discussion why land reforms are important and crucial, and why in our country land reforms have never been allowed to be implemented. So now I go take you back in history to Japan. So Japan also used to be a feudal country. So but there had been a Meiji restoration in 1867. So from that, the land from the feudal landlords was taken and given to the small poor farmers. The same thing applied in India when partition took place. So India carried out land reforms twice. One was under this 26th Amendment of Indian Constitution. So first of all was in mid 1960, Zimedari Abolition Act of 1950. Zamindari. Sorry, Zamindari Abolition Act of 1950, the elimination of the middleman by the mid 90s, and the urban land sealing and regulation. And then there was secondly in 1976 as well. And then obviously, there had been a princely states, they were big landowner. The land was confiscated from them and then was distributed among the poor farmers. So that's how India got its land reforms. And now when a poor person has a certain kind of a land, he owns it, and then he gives his sweat and toil and all kind of effort to harvest it and to give better productivity. Whereas when a landowner has that kind of a immense amount of land, which is beyond his capacity or need, then obviously he is not interested in having any kind of a productive crop cultivation or everything. So they had been using, and unfortunately there had been some kind. So Pakistan tried again twice to implement land reforms. One during President Ayub Khan, General Ayub Khan, in 1960, and during Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in 1974. But both times it has been failed because the Islamic Shariat Court, which is parallel to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, it had given a decree on 10th of April 1979 that land reforms are un-Islamic in Pakistan. So because of being un-Islamic, they were never allowed to take place. So that's how we have feudal landlords who have huge, immense agricultural holding, and because of that, there is a social disparity in the country. With this disparity, there is income difference. The poor is extremely poor, the rich are filthy rich, and the middle class is sandwiched between the two because there is a salaried class and they are under double taxation, which we'll talk later. So if you go and Google it, a few months ago there had been in a leading newspaper there had been an article titled "Poverty by Design." So in this country, the ashrafia or the elites, they have kept the majority of the people poor by design. This is also called as a rentier state mindset. Afghanistan primarily was called as a rentier state, which survives on foreign rent. It's an old story that, as a buffer state, it used to extract rent from Russia as well, and from the British Empire as well, just to be neutral. So Pakistan is also said to become a rentier state because it is surviving on foreign rent, using its geographic location and surviving on foreign aid and loans. So grants and loans. So understand. So the first problem is our feudalism, Vaderas and Sardars and Jagirdars. And, the second is our feudal constitution. Obviously, a constitution which was made by the feudals in 1974 is technically a feudal constitution. And that has been safeguarding the economic and commercial interests of the feudal landlords, and those later on became the industrialists. Then we have a religious mafia or the clergy. This country has two sets of sub subsects of Sunni sect. That is the Deobandi and Barelvi. So Deobandi is basically a hardline subsect, and Barelvi is basically a soft one. So all these Gadi machines of different shrines, they have a significant following of poor, illiterate population. So they had been used for political purposes. Their following has been used. So they were. If you go on YouTube, you will find the lectures on that how these people were used to get votes from their followers for the political purposes. So and obviously these the peers or Gadi machines of the Sufi saints shrines, obviously they extracted significant amount of financial dividends from these politicians. So for that, it was extremely important to put a check on the activities of these politicians. If I pose you a question, are you in your honest heart, do you agree that these politicians who have been ruling your country for the past 78 years, are they loyal and faithful to the country? I pose this question to you. Ask it honestly. And if your answer is no, then obviously you would agree that there has to be some kind of a check and on their activities, because otherwise, what they say, that they will play foul with the country and its people. So another problem is obviously is our predatory form of the government. It is booted, it is lavish spending, and it is using all kind of its high salaries, perks and privileges. You have seen their protocols, their entourage, their motorcades and everything for their protocol and their security purposes, which obviously a poor country cannot afford. But this is one thing. Another thing is our double taxation. These days there is a drive for to get the taxes formalized. So what happens? That one, the taxes are embedded in the daily utilities, electricity, fuel, and everything. So the one taxes are embedded in that. Then the government says asks you, pressurizes you to get enrolled or for formally become a legitimate taxpayer. But then it becomes a double taxation, which is taught in different business schools. I am not sure, but some people say there is a 73% of Canada has about 34% of taxes. Say in this country, they say that it's 73% of indirect taxes. But please understand, I agree totally with your unrest, with your feeling of frustration, which is not unique to you guys. Understand that when this Arab Spring took place in 2011, there had been a popular revolt which started from Morocco or Tunisia, and then it spread to different other countries also, Lebanon, Algeria, Iraq. So then there had been a second Arab Spring also. Arab Spring was revolt against the existing monarchies, which had been sitting for years and years, several years. So second Arab Spring came in 2019, right? It started from Lebanon, came to Iraq, Algeria, and Morocco. They said that we are upset. We do not approve. The youngsters, the young generation said, we do not approve the present form of the government. The governance has to change because they are not, the ordinary population is not getting any kind of a benefit from this governance system. But unfortunately, because of the political issues, and most importantly, the militaries in those countries, they are the biggest beneficiary of the state resources. So they did not side with the population. When they did not side, when the military did not side in those countries with the masses, so then the revolution or the protests were subsided. So failed Arab Spring 2011, failed Arab Spring 2019. Then we have this Gen Z, Gen Z revolts. It started from Philippines, came to Indonesia, Sri Lanka. Then we saw the toppling of the government in Bangladesh. Went to Nepal again. They burned down the the parliament. It went to Madagascar, and then when it came to this country, people are saying that the youngsters would bring a revolution. Unfortunately, it's difficult. It's difficult because, again, as I said, that the militaries in these countries are the biggest beneficiaries of the state resources, and they do not want to upset the apple cart. So until and unless they join the masses to create some kind of a revolutionized change, until that time, no change would come to this country. So we have to wait. So understand, I'm not against political participation of youngsters into the political affairs, but again, my father had advised me not to do that. And when before that, for a brief stint, I went to a college as well. And there I saw at that time the political activities were rife in the colleges, in the universities as well. So there used to be two different parties in the academic institutions. One was the Black Eagle, and the other one was Islamic Jamiyat-e-Tulba. And I am witness that they had been fighting, quarreling, even causing death because of their everyday scuffle. So, what good is that politics is? So, my advice to you is to refrain from all these kind of political activities and focus on your studies. Understand, the more you make your foundation strong, the better, the more high rise would be you would be able to achieve in your professional careers. So it's important, if you start focusing or spending your energies on political issues, then obviously your energies would be divided. So I would encourage you to focus on your studies, and then I'm sure one day you would become very, very, very strong in your professional career. And then uh, obviously all these issues, they can wait. They can wait until then. So before I wind up, I'll share a Murphy law. There are Murphy laws on different realities of life. So what had impressed me was one Murphy law, which I'm going to share with you, and I would like you to write it down and read it every day. It says, never teach a buffalo how to sing. Never teach a buffalo how to sing, because it frustrates you and annoys the buffalo as well. So, again, if you would like to bring a change in this country, there are ways and means, peaceful ways and means. Please do that. Otherwise, if you think that you cannot alone, you are not insufficient to bring a change, then obviously attend to take a step back and attend to your studies, right? Become more professional, more solid in your education, and then there are ways and means, and then the time would come, because obviously a single person or a group would not be able to bring this massive change in this country. And obviously, as I said, that there is a background to it. Until that background or those fundamental ailments are addressed, like land reforms, like inadequate income disparity, like social injustice in this country, like status, the class difference. Until these issues are addressed, then obviously you cannot bring a change in this country. So focus on your, so understand why. So first of all, accept that you are angry, which I acknowledge as your legitimate feeling, right? But that is misplaced. Do not spend your energies on that misplaced feeling. Attend to your education, become a solid professional person, and then this world is for you. You can go to different countries, you can become an international student, international worker, and live a happy life. So today was this lecture was aimed at your grievance, your political grievance against a certain institution or the government in place, which I just want to highlight that it has a background. It has a historical background. We have a historical baggage. Until that baggage is removed, until those issues are addressed, we are going to continue with that thing. So if you cannot change a thing, you cannot make a buffalo to sing. So relax and enjoy. So with this, we come to an end of the second, or this is the fifth lecture. So which means to understanding your political grievance and then addressing them. Thank you very much. With this, I grant leave to Adnan Qaiser, and will come again and discuss the subsequent element of your rights and responsibilities, civic duties, rights and responsibilities in the next lecture. Take good care. Until next time, and Khuda Hafiz.